What's up, guys? Nuance Pro checking in, and today we're going to be talking about illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, undocumented immigrants, whatever you want to call them, and whether they commit more crime than US citizens or not. Now, I want to preface this video by saying that this isn't a video advocating a particular policy position. If you want to know my personal feelings, I'm against illegal immigration, and I support strengthening the border to prevent more illegal immigration and believe that those in the country illegally should be deported. That said, I think it's very important that people use facts when talking about any issue and that they don't use bad data or misinterpret data. Being statistically literate is very important. If you use bad information, it makes it very easy for your opponents to paint you as ill-informed or a liar. So if you're someone who appreciates the facts, then this video is for you. So I originally got the idea for this video because a few weeks back, I saw a video clip of Van Jones at CPAC where he said this.
We don't talk to each other. Undocumented immigrants right now have a lower crime rate than the rest of us, and yet we don't talk about that. No, hold on. What I'm saying is...
I told you I control the time.
Okay, good.
So I saw that clip and I saw the audience boo. It made me wonder if they were booing because they felt that what he said was factually inaccurate, or if they felt that what he said in the context of illegal immigration was irrelevant, even when one murder from someone who is in the country illegally is one murder too many. But then I was working on the video and I came across this video from Vincent James of the Red Elephants, where he decided to debunk Van Jones with stats and sources. And after watching the video, I knew I had to include some of his claims in the video because I think it demonstrates how people can really misread stats and get bad information they haven't fully vetted or looked at. So with that said, let's get started.
Let's start with the Bureau of Justice statistics. Statistics by your government that have been available for a very long time. Of course, Van Jones doesn't look at these statistics.
So just a quick note, these are not numbers from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. They're technically from ICE, also known as Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, in their fiscal year 2017 ICE Enforcement and Removal Operations report. Now, this is just a technicality, and the Bureau of Justice Statistics does link to ICE on their website, but this is technically from ICE.
This is for the fiscal year of 2017, just 1 year. And if we look at the homicide rate by illegal aliens, we're seeing 1,886. So over 1,800 homicides by illegal aliens in just 1 year. Now ask yourself, how many illegal aliens do they say reside in this country? They say 12 million, right? Well, if we take 1,886 and we divide that by their population of 12 million, we take that calculation and we multiply it by 100,000, you get a per 100,000 homicide rate by illegal aliens of about 15.7.
So there's a few problems here. First of all, this document isn't about illegal aliens like he says it is. If you look at the document, it says criminal aliens. An alien is anyone who is not a US citizen. This includes lawful permanent residents, green card holders, people who are on work visas, student visas, tourist visas, and illegal aliens, etc. A criminal alien is anyone who is an alien, legal or illegal, that commits a crime. You can even see a differentiation in the same document between illegal and criminal aliens. According to the American Immigration Council, 10% of those deported each year are legal permanent residents. That number doesn't even include other legal aliens like those on tourist visas or work visas, etc. The other point when it comes to this document is that these numbers are not for homicides committed in 2017. Notice how one side shows charges and the other side shows convictions. Notice the large disparities in the numbers. Those conviction numbers reflect people who ICE took custody of after they have served their sentence so that they can be deported. This means their murders could have been committed decades ago. So when we combine the fact that the report includes all non-citizens, not just illegal aliens, and the homicides in the report were not even necessarily committed in the same year, the report becomes useless when you try to compare it to actual homicides within a given year. Now, before we get to the rest of this video, I just want to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, ButcherBox. As many of you know, I'm a big fan of ButcherBox because they're a company that sells 100% grass-fed and grass-finished beef, as well as organic free-range chicken and heritage pork. And this month, if you use our link, www.butcherbox.com/nuancebro, they have a special offer where you'll get 2 pounds of ground beef free with each ButcherBox for life, plus an additional $20 off your first purchase. This offer is only good for this month of March, so I highly recommend jumping on it while you can. And now back to the video.
Let's go ahead and reference an article that I've referenced on this channel many different times that quotes many different studies. This is called The Truth About Crime, Illegal Immigrants in Sanctuary Cities by The Hill.
Now, I came across this particular article about 9 months ago when I saw Steven Crowder use this claim in his Build the Wall, Change My Mind segment.
About 3.5% of the population of the United States are undocumented immigrants, but they commit 37% of the homicides, of the murders. They commit up to 13% of the violent crimes.
13%.
So 3.5% of the population, illegal immigrants, commit 37% of the murders in this country.
Now, when he claimed that illegals, being 3.5% of the population, committed 37% of the homicides, I wrote a comment which said, "I'm pretty sure illegals don't commit 37% of homicides. Where did you get that number?" Because even if you take all Hispanics in the US, not just the illegal ones, the number is lower than 37%, unless Nigerian and Polish illegals are just massacring people. And to my surprise, Steven Crowder actually responded, writing, "I went to check the source, and it turns out the estimate comes from a piece on The Hill, which has since been edited a bit. Illegal immigrants committed 22% to 37% of all murders in the nation, while making up 3.5% of the population. It appears that particular estimate may indeed be a bit on the high end, but the fact remains that Mexican immigrants commit between 3.5 and 5 times as many crimes as native population." And then he goes on to cite a Heritage article that mentions federal inmate populations, which aren't representative of violent crimes nationwide, since most federal crimes deal with things like immigration, drug trafficking across the border, etc. So I don't have time to get into all of that in this video, since it's already long enough as is. But if we click the Hill article that he mentions and we scroll down, we can see the claim that says, according to an op-ed earlier this year at The Hill, a population of just over 3.5% residing in the US unlawfully committed 22% to 37% of all murders in the nation. And when we click the link for the op-ed it's citing, you can see that it's the same Hill article in the Vincent James video.
This is written by Ron Martinelli, a criminologist, and he goes on to talk about the General Accounting Office statistics, the government statistics. He goes on to talk about studies in California, in Arizona, in New York, in New Jersey, and every single one shows that illegal aliens commit a much higher crime rate than your average legal resident. Let's go ahead and start off with the General Accounting Office statistics. We see that from 2003 to 2009, a 6-year period, criminal immigrants committed 25,000 homicides.
So just a quick note here. You can see he switched pages from the Hill article to some unknown page that has a graph about the mentioned statistic. But you can see the language cited on this new page is slightly different than the language used in the Hill article. Notice the slight change in language between these two statements. The Hill article mentions 2 different date ranges, 2005 through 2008 and 2003 through 2009. However, when it mentions the 25,064 homicides, it doesn't tell you which of those 2 date ranges it's referring to or applies to. But this new page that Vincent James is showing lists the years 2003 to 2009 date range. Keep in mind that through is different than to. Now, my guess is that this new page he is showing us, which he did not cite in his description box, is a document that he produced himself. Vincent James is known for making his own graphs, so he was likely referencing the original Hill article, but decided to make an assumption that the author was referencing the 2003 through 2009 date range. But if that's the case, why would the author even mention the 2005 through 2008 date range? The choice by the original Hill author to mention 2 separate date ranges with 2 separate murder totals while referencing a single homicide total for criminal aliens should immediately set off some alarm bells. But let's keep watching and we'll get into the details in just a bit.
In that 6-year period, that's about 4,000 per year. So, of course, criminal immigrants also include people that do not hold an unlawful status here in this country. But even if we divided that number by 50%, we say 50% margin of error, 2,000. 2,000 per year would still give you a homicide rate per 100,000 that is 3 times higher the average legal resident. But we think that it's much worse than this, because most of the homicides are committed within this GAO study. If you dig into it, you can see and you can safely assume that most of the homicides are committed by criminal immigrants who hold an unlawful status here. So I would say it's probably closer to about 3,800.
So I'm glad he mentioned this time that this study doesn't only apply to illegal aliens, but also legal ones. But let's start out with this basic calculation. He says that 2003 to 2009 is a 6-year period. He would be correct if that was what the author of the Hill article said, but he didn't. The author said 2003 through 2009, which is different than 2003 to 2009. So it's actually a 7-year period, not a 6-year period, and I can prove it. The author mentioned 115,717 murders between 2003 through 2009. Well, if we go to the FBI website, we can find a list of murders by year, so let's add up the numbers. So if we only add up the numbers for 6 years starting in 2003, we only get 100,318. But if we add up 7 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, we get the exact number of 115,717 that the author cited. So Vincent James' calculation dividing 25,064 by 6, which got him 4,166 homicides per year, isn't even correct because, first of all, 25,064 divided by 6 is actually 4,177.33 repeating. But 25,064 divided by 7 would get him 3,581. But none of that even matters because he says that if you dig into the reference GAO study, that you can see the numbers are much worse. Now, of course, he doesn't dig into the numbers himself to show you, so let's take a look at the GAO study that was referenced by both the Hill article and Vincent James himself. So if we go to the article and we click this link, it takes us to the GAO report. Now, if we do a quick search for the reference 25,064 homicides, we can find this number here. Now, remember when we talked about the issue with the different date ranges of 2005 through 2008 versus 2003 through 2009? Well, let's take a look at what years this study actually looks at when it comes to these homicides. So if we scroll up to the reference section titled Criminal Aliens Arrest and Convictions, we can see they cite a random sample of 1,000 criminal aliens from a study population of about 249,000 criminal aliens. And of that study population, they recorded arrests for approximately 2.9 million offenses. And if we scroll down, we can see that they say, our analysis includes criminal aliens with arrests dating from August 1955 to April 2010. Wow. So it's not 2005 through 2008, which is a 4-year period, and it's not 2003 through 2009, which is a 7-year period. It's 1955 to 2010, which is a 55 to 56-year period. Holy crap. Talk about really f***ing up the data. Now, to be fair, the report also says that about 90% of the arrests in our study population occurred after 1990. So now you could argue that the window of time is mostly a 20-year period instead of 55, but keep in mind this 90% figure is referring to the 2.9 million offenses and not the homicide numbers in particular. So for all we know, homicides could be only 60% after 1990 or 50%, but who knows? I don't think I've ever seen this big of a up when it comes to statistical data in my life. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who ever actually cares to read these studies. The 2005 through 2008 and 2003 through 2009 date ranges were referenced in the report as analyzed data from the U.S. Sentencing Commission on federal convictions of criminal aliens from fiscal years 2003 through 2009 and conviction data from 5 states, Arizona, California, Florida, New York, and Texas, from fiscal years 2005 through 2008. That means those with conviction records and currently in the criminal justice system. But their actual crimes, as you saw from the earlier date range, was from 1955 through 2010. Anyways, let's continue.
Let's move on. It gets even worse than this. We move on to a DOJ report. It says nearly half of federal crimes are committed near the Mexican border. Now, this particular study quotes a bunch of government statistics once again, and it goes on to show you that almost 1/3 of all federal prisoners in all federal prisons in this country are illegally here.
Now, to be honest, I don't know why he cited this study because in the video he says the study shows that nearly 1/3 of federal prisoners are illegally here, but the Judicial Watch article he shows in the video and the DOJ report that's mentioned and referenced make no mention about illegal aliens or criminal aliens or undocumented immigrants or anything. The only Mexico that was mentioned was the American state of New Mexico. But remember, his video is supposed to be about debunking Van Jones' claim that illegal immigrants commit crime at a lower rate than native-born Americans. And even though illegal aliens do make up a disproportionate share of federal prisoners, that's not nationally representative. Federal prisoners only make up 8% of the nationwide prison population, and most federal prisoner sentences have to do with immigration crime. So of course illegal immigrants who break immigration law are going to be disproportionately represented.
We go on to another study the Hill article references, and it's out of Arizona. Undocumented immigrants, U.S. citizens, and convicted criminals in Arizona. We read on, using newly released detailed data on all prisoners who entered the Arizona State Prison from January 1985 through June 2017, we are able to separate non-U.S. citizens by whether they are illegal or legal residents. So that answers the whole criminal immigrant questions that you have about lawful versus unlawful residents here. Unlike other studies, these data do not rely on self-reporting of criminal backgrounds. Undocumented immigrants, illegal aliens, are at least 142% more likely to be convicted of a crime than other Arizonans.
Now, this study is by well-known economist John Lott Jr., who I'm personally a fan of. I actually have one of his books, More Guns, Less Crime, listed on my Amazon web store, and I highly recommend it. Now, of all the studies mentioned in this video, and frankly, of all the studies on illegal immigrants and crime in the last few decades, this study is the only one that comes close to demonstrating that illegal immigrants commit more crimes than US citizens, at least in the state of Arizona. To date, this is probably the best study there is that shows a higher crime rate. But this study has many problems as well. First of all, Lott claims that citizenship status was determined by what was listed in the pre-sentencing report, and prosecutors and others knew it even much earlier in the case than that. This is key because documented immigrants aren't labeled as non-US citizen deportable until after they've been sentenced. In contrast, illegal aliens are labeled that way prior to sentencing. If we look earlier in the paragraph, we can see it stated that the data here were collected for a report put together for the Arizona Prosecuting Attorneys Advisory Council. Now, if we go to the beginning of this study, we can see Lott mentions, in particular, Bill Montgomery, who represented the Arizona Prosecuting Attorneys Advisory Council and is the DA for Maricopa County, was very helpful. Now, in a Washington Post article, Lott tells the reporter he followed the guidance of the Arizona County Attorneys Association and District Attorney Bill Montgomery of Maricopa County. He, Montgomery, told us that a pre-sentencing report is used to determine citizenship, Lott wrote. This is key because documented immigrants don't risk being labeled as non-US citizen deportable until after they have been convicted. Did Montgomery give these pointers to Lott? No, and Mr. Montgomery has not read the study, said Amanda Jacinto, a spokeswoman for the district attorney. Mr. Montgomery has no knowledge of this category or the distinctions made between legal and illegal immigrants in how the Arizona Department of Corrections classifies inmates on this basis. Now, as I looked into this study more for myself, I found issues that even Mr. Lott himself seemed to have a problem with when it came to pre-sentencing reports. For example, under Table 1, race and citizenship of those incarcerated in Arizona per incarceration, we can see of the 5,993 US-born Hispanics in 2014 that were incarcerated in Arizona, 1.1% of them were counted as undocumented immigrants. Now, this makes no sense because all US-born persons are US citizens under the law. Lott noticed this and wrote the following in his footnotes. One concern with the table is that there are US-born individuals who are listed as not being US citizens or who are attempting to gain citizenship, though this last group is extremely small. We asked Bill Montgomery, the county prosecutor for Maricopa County, and the Arizona Department of Corrections about these cases, and we were told that they involved people renouncing their US citizenship and then returning to the US or whose US citizenship was never claimed. Given the small number of people who have renounced their citizenship, this assumption seems questionable. So you can see Lott is skeptical of his own data in the study, and rightfully so. Stack those questionable numbers with the fact that Bill Montgomery's office said they did not tell Lott the info he claimed in his study, and the info seems even weaker. Another person Lott mentions as helpful in the beginning of his study is Alex Naureste, an analyst of immigration policy at the Cato Institute. He has an article that analyzes Lott's study and outlines many of the problems with the study, some of which I have mentioned in this video. He and Lott actually have a few articles where they respond to one another and address one another's critiques, so I recommend you check all of those out. But despite all its issues, I do think the study is the best of its kind, and at least when it comes to the state of Arizona, it does seem like illegal immigrants might commit more crime than US citizens. Another interesting note from the Lott study I want to mention is this point about recidivism. Recidivism is the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend. Lott's study looked at this and found that while undocumented immigrants are more likely to be convicted of crimes, they also exhibit extremely low recidivism and criminal history rates. Among criminals who are US citizens, a small subset keeps going in and out of prison. Among undocumented immigrants, a much larger proportion go to prison once or twice and then never return to prison. 24.8% of US citizens were admitted 5 or more times in the Arizona Department of Corrections, but that same number is only 2.95% for undocumented immigrants. The evidence suggests that these individuals leave Arizona after being incarcerated. Now, my guess would be that deportations are responsible for the disproportionately low levels of recidivism. This seems to indicate that while other studies do show that illegal immigrants commit crime at a lower rate than native-born Americans, these numbers could be artificially suppressed due to the recidivist element being all but eliminated from society via deportation. If illegal immigrants were not deported after committing crimes, the rates of crime and criminals could build up over time and lead to a higher crime rate.
So we can even go to the TDPS, the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Just a quick note here, but notice the Texas Department of Safety website uses the term criminal illegal alien as opposed to the term criminal alien, which we were talking about before in the other documents. This means we're no longer talking about non-citizens who commit crime, but just the ones who are illegally present in the country. Just a quick note.
This is a website that I've referenced on my channel many different times, and you can see that also within Texas, which they say that they have about 5% of their population in Texas are undocumented immigrants. That makes up about 3.3 million people within the state of Texas who are, quote, undocumented, as the left would like to call them. And we see a murder rate or a homicide rate at about 15.5, once again, per 100,000 within the state of Texas when you break it all down and you look through all these different graphs and statistics.
So he says that illegal immigrants in Texas are about 5% of the population, which he says is 3.3 million undocumented immigrants. Texas, as of 2018, had a population of 28.7 million people. 5% of 28.7 million would equal 1.43 million. That's less than half of his 3.3 million number, so I don't know where he got that statistic. Maybe he misspoke or was thinking of some other number. I'm also not sure where he gets a homicide rate of 15.5 per 100,000 for illegal aliens. He doesn't show how he got that number, so your guess is as good as mine, but I'm going to assume he looked at this section of the Texas DPS report. Lawful presence determined while incarcerated at TDCJ, which says from 2011 to date, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, TDCJ, has provided DPS with information on more than 26,000 individuals who were identified by DHS as in the country illegally while they were incarcerated at TDCJ. 10,320 of these individuals were not identified through the PEP program at the time of their arrest. DPS does not know the current incarceration status of the individuals identified while they were incarcerated, nor when their alien status was initially determined. Over the course of their entire Texas criminal careers, these 10,320 individuals identified as illegal aliens while in prison were charged with more than 47,000 criminal offenses, which included arrests for 1,929 homicide charges. So we took the 1,929 homicide charges and divided them by 8 for the numbers of years since 2011, and then divided by the estimated Texas illegal immigrant population of 1.6 million, and multiplied that by 100,000 to get the per capita number of around 15.07. But this is an extremely flawed statistic. First of all, the TDCJ, according to Alex Nauraste, appears to only count immigrants with an ICE hold, which also includes immigrants who were legally present in the United States at the time of their arrest, but who lost their legal status when they convicted as illegal immigrants. This is an important difference, as the Texas DPS counts the immigration status of the offender at the time of arrest, not after conviction, when the offender could potentially lose his lawful immigration status as a result of his conviction. Thus, the TDCJ counts more illegal immigrants in prison because they are including criminals who were legal immigrants at the time of their arrest and who lost their lawful status after they were convicted due to their conviction. So the TDCJ numbers are not accurate. Texas, to my knowledge, is the only state that actually tracks the legal status of its prisoners. This is why the Texas DPS data with respect to convictions in a given year is actually very accurate and good to use. And when we take a look at those numbers, we actually see that native-born Americans have a homicide conviction rate of 3.1 per 100,000, and illegal aliens have a homicide conviction rate of 2.6 per 100,000. This holds true for overall criminal convictions as well, with native-born Americans holding a criminal conviction rate of 1,797 per 100,000, while illegal aliens have a criminal conviction rate of 899 per 100,000. Also, keep in mind that virtually all these numbers that we talked about in this video assume some of the lowest estimates of the illegal immigrant population at 10.7 million nationwide. Many of the most anti-immigrant activists, like Ann Coulter, claim that the true illegal alien population in the United States is at least 30 million. If that's the case, then that would mean the illegal immigrant crime rate would be over 60% lower than the numbers that we discussed in this video.
So if you are watching this, if this was shared to you by one of your right-wing friends or conservative friends, if you are watching this, if you are a commentator on the news, who knows who's watching this video, please stop reiterating this false and now debunked talking point and trying to trick the American people to not caring about the crimes committed by illegal aliens in this country.
So Vincent James ends this video with what I think is an important message. People shouldn't reiterate these false and now debunked talking points about illegal aliens and their crime rates. If you're against illegal immigration like I am, it's important to know the stats inside and out. And my hope is that with this video, it made everyone watching more informed on the issue in a way that allows them to better articulate their points and form an opinion based on the best available facts and information. At the end of the day, we should always be on the side of facts. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the video. This video took me a long time to make, so do me a favor and hit that like button and share this video with anyone you think would benefit from this information. And also, let me know your thoughts about, this video in the comments. Were you surprised? Did you enjoy having me break down the studies and dig deep into these numbers? Do you want to see more videos like this from me in the future? Let me know. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, very important, and notification bell to get more videos. And I'll see you next time, bro.